Have you heard of reward behavior charts where the parents and teachers will give out stars to the children to motivate them or reward them when they have a good behavior? This is considered an extrinsic motivation. I read that online and some of them say that that's not the best way to motivate a child. So I was very interested and I went to research on it. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you what is extrinsic motivations, the different types of extrinsic motivations, why is it considered not the best way to motivate a child, and are there any uses for extrinsic motivation? So if you're interested, please stay tuned. So what is extrinsic motivation? According to the expert like Edward Dacey and Richard Ryan, who are the well-known psychologists in this research area called motivations, they define extrinsic motivation as a drive that makes people behave in a certain way because of the external sources. This is different from intrinsic motivations where people behave or do certain activity because of inherent interest or enjoyment. It is not affected by external pressure or external incentives. So how many types of extrinsic motivations are there? There are 4 types. Number 1 is external regulation. Number 2 is introject regulation. Number 3 is identified regulation. And the last one is integrated regulation. So what is external regulations? It means that the behaviors are being regulated by external sources such as rewards, incentives, or punishments and artificial consequences. They are not only experience something that is being controlled and they don't have any autonomy over it. So example includes giving out children stars when they behave well and taking away the stars when they don't behave well. This is not promoted as the best way to motivate a child because the child's motivated by external sources, and when these external sources are not there, they may not be engaged or interested in the activity anymore, and they might eventually quit when it becomes difficult. So what is introject regulation? Introject means that one adopts others' ideas and thoughts on a superficial layer. They may not understand on a deeper layer the rationale for these ideas and thoughts. Usually these behaviors are governed by what other people think of them instead of being driven by their own values and belief system. For example, that includes fame and shame. For instance, a lot of Asian parents will encourage their children to go and study to become a doctor. They will say, "Boya, go and study to become a doctor. You will earn lots and lots of money and people will respect you for it." If the child subconsciously adopt this idea and grow up to pursue medicine, they might question themselves during the course of the study or during their career and ask themselves, why are they doing that? And if they met with their difficulties, they might eventually quit because they don't believe in the purpose, the intention of this profession. So instead, maybe the parents could say that, "Oh, it looks like that you're very interested in human anatomy and how it works, and it looks like you're very interested to help people. Perhaps you might want to consider like healthcare industry." So in this way, you are exposing the child to tap on their interest level and what they're strong at and guide them to pursue a profession that they might be interested in. So what is identified regulation? It means that the behavior is regulated when the person identifies with the value and benefit of this idea or activity, they normally do out of their own will. So there is an autonomy component to it. For example, if the child has not been eating enough fruits and vegetables and they are suffering from natural consequences such as constipation, we can explain to the child that the reason why they're experiencing constipation is because they are not having enough fluid and fiber in their body, and therefore they are not able to excrete these waste material out smoothly. So we can encourage them to say that you can drink more water and eat more fruits and vegetables so that when you go to the bathroom, it will be much easier for them. When the child experiences such natural consequence and experience the pain of it, they are more likely to be able to identify with the advice that are being given to by the parents, and they're more likely to enact on these such behaviors because they do not want to suffer from these natural consequences. They know that there is a benefit to these such activities. So what is integrated regulations? It means that the person not just identify with the value or the activity, but they have kind of integrated into either their existing system, or that new idea of the activity could have transformed the existing system into a new way of thinking, a new value or belief system. So this requires introspective process where the person needs to examine their own way of thinking, belief system and values. Once this integration is successful, this regulation is most autonomous form of extrinsic motivation. So let's go back to the same example where the child might be experiencing constipation. The child may consciously and make an effort to ensure that there will be vegetables enough in their meal, and they will ensure that they drink sufficient amount of water in the day. So identified regulation and integrated regulations are two forms of autonomous external motivation, meaning that these two regulations allow the person to be able to do such activity out of their own will, and it's not being experienced as something that's being controlled. So how is this external autonomous motivations where people do out of their own will different from the intrinsic motivation where they are also doing the activity out of their own will? So in the case of intrinsic motivations, people are doing such activity because they're interested in it or because they enjoy it. Whereas for external autonomous motivations, people do such activity because they believe in the value of that activity and they believe that it's worthwhile to do it. It might not necessarily be enjoyable for them. So for example, in intrinsic motivation, the person might want to go for an art class because they are very interested in art and they would like to learn more about it. So in an example of extrinsic autonomous motivation, the person may volunteer to become a soldier during war times because they have deep sense of belonging to their home country. They are very patriotic, they want to protect their country, their loved ones. So it might not necessarily because they want to be a soldier, but because they believe that what they are doing is something important to them, it's something that it brings about meaning for them. So why do people think that extrinsic motivation is not the best way to motivate our children? I think the question we should ask ourselves after knowing different types of extrinsic motivation is, what type of extrinsic motivation are we talking about? Are we talking about non-autonomous extrinsic motivations where people are doing the activity not because they want to, but rather because they are being driven by external sources such as rewards and punishment, or because of what society might think of them? So if we're talking about this non-autonomous extrinsic motivation, then this might not be the best way to motivate people, because once these external sources are not there, the person might cease not to do such activity because the driving source for this activity is already gone. So let's look at an example of the external regulations such as the reward system. So how do you define reward? A reward is defined as a thing given in recognition of service, effort, or achievement. It can come in form of verbal, such as praise, or it can come in form of tangible rewards, such as the physical rewards. Rewards undermine the intrinsic motivations as it is used to control the person's behavior. So let's give you a case study. For example, if we give a reward system for the child to read books, such as buying toys for them if they read a certain number of books, we are effectively changing the underlying reason for why the child is reading the book. We might have a good intention of wanting to promote the love for reading, but effectively we have just killed the interest and undermined the intrinsic motivation. And it is not sustainable because you have to keep up with the resource for such reward system so as to have this continuation of such behavior. So there's this particular studies where people are confined in this area like an MRI where they can study the activity of the brain. And during this process, they have given these participants a video game to play. And in the first group, the participants are allowed to play the video game in the MRI. In the second study, the participants are told that if they get certain score in that video game, they will be given a reward. And they found that in the research study, the brain activity where they have this satisfaction for the activity light up in certain parts of the brain in these two groups. In the next part of the study, in the second group, they told the participants that there will be no more reward systems when they play the video game. So then they study the MRI imaging for both the brain. And they realized that in the first group, where there is no reward systems, that the participants, certain parts of their brain still light up because they are interested in the activity. But for the second participants where there is no more reward system, that part of the brain where there is satisfaction in what they are doing, it does not light up anymore. So this study shows that when there is no more reward system, the person may not find any much more enjoyment or interest in such activity. It kind of undermined their interest and their intrinsic motivation for such activity. So now let's look at external regulations such as praise. So what does praise mean? Praise means that one express their warm approval or admiration. So a lot of us think that praise will help to enhance the intrinsic motivation because it kind of enhances the feeling of competence. So for example, we can say, Boya, you are so clever, you can do this math question. So this praise might be very genuine where we want to praise our child so that they feel good about themselves and hopefully to motivate them more. However, there is a potential side effect to it because the child might not want to do any more challenging work because they might be viewed as not so clever and they might skip all these challenging sums so that they can do some easier sum where they will be seen as clever. So that kind of undermine them and kind of put a ceiling to their ability. So the better way to motivate the child is to focus on the effort or behavior rather than the results or the person's ability. For example, you can tell the child, oh wow, you managed to solve this problem. I really like how you stay so focused to make sure that you can work out the problem and the sum. So when you focus on effort instead of the result, that you are showing the child that there is an importance in trying hard, in working hard to solve certain problem. So when you focus on the effort, you are technically, encourage the child to try hard in future. And in this way, the child is more likely not to give up when they're met with a challenging task. The next example we can look at is when a child come up to you and show you a piece of their drawing, and our natural reaction and our genuine response will be, oh wow, your drawing is so beautiful. And what happened is that you could potentially make the child feel uncomfortable and they will be really stressed out to make sure that the drawing will look beautiful in your definition. So what will be more helpful will be if you tell your child what you see and what you like about their drawing. For instance, you can say, oh wow, your drawing is so colorful. I like the choice of your colors. I can see how you put in the focus and the effort to make sure that you color within the lines. This will help the child to know where they have done well so that they can improve on it and they can continue with such behavior. So in praise, there is also such thing as artificial praise, which it means that they are done deliberately to control the person to behave in a certain way. It undermines the intrinsic motivation because it is experienced as being controlled or manipulated to behave in a certain manner. For example, you could tell the child, you are a good boy, so please share your toys. So the message we are giving to the child is, you need to behave in certain manner so that you will be validated as a good boy. So in this manner, this praise is not a genuine praise, but rather this praise is targeted to control the person to behave in such a manner. It is not because of warm approval, it's not because they admire such a behavior. So there is also another thing as genuine praise where it means that it comes out spontaneously and is usually to simply express their genuine appreciation and delight. For example, you can say to a child, oh, what a surprise, you have cleaned up the mess. Thank you for doing that. So I personally don't think that all praises are bad. It depends on the motive of such praise, whether it is to control the person's behavior or it is to express the genuine admiration and approval of such good behavior. And usually a genuine praise that comes out of spontaneity usually works well because the person feels recognized for their good work and they don't feel like they're being controlled or manipulated to perform a specific behavior. So, does extrinsic motivation has any usefulness or value in motivating others? Personally, I think extrinsic motivation, particularly on autonomous extrinsic motivation such as identified regulations where people identify with the value of such activity, or integrated regulations where people not just identify with the value of the activity, but it has also fully integrated into their system. I think these two forms of autonomous extrinsic motivations can have a value in motivating other people because number one, people do out of their own will, they are not being controlled, and usually they perform because they believe in what they are doing, they see that it's worthwhile, they see that there is an importance in such activity or idea, and therefore they will still persist in such activity even it means that it might not be enjoyable for them. So in conclusion, I don't think extrinsic motivation may not necessarily be a bad way to motivate our children. It all boils down to the autonomy structure. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the informational sharing on extrinsic motivations, different types of extrinsic motivations, and why some people don't think that they are an effective way of motivating others, and what are the usefulness of extrinsic motivations. I hope you have enjoyed such an information sharing. If you like this video, I will appreciate a like, and I'll see you in the next video. See you, bye!